You're listening to Pro Booth Talk, education and insights for photo booth company owners.
Welcome back to Pro Booth Talk. Lap, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us today.
So I see a lot of conversation in the groups about drop-off photo booths. You mentioned that you don't do that very often, but I feel like you do, though. Maybe
I do and I don't.
Okay. So I mean,
how much do you do? How many, like, where do you stand with drop-offs, and how often do you do them in comparison to like your regular booth events?
So here's the thing. I see in the group a lot of people refer to drop-offs for like social events, like dropping them off for weddings and things like that. In that respect, we don't do very many, like almost none. But as far as like on the marketing side for like trade shows, internally we call those short-term leases. We don't call them drop-offs, but we do those all the time, like very, very frequently, where we'll just go set up for a trade show the day before the trade show starts and then come back after the trade show's over and break it down and take it away. So we do that frequently. You don't do those frequently? I feel like you would.
I don't do them frequently just because I know I always talk about how I don't really like market or advertise. So a lot of the stuff that we do is word of mouth advertising. So the clients that we do have that do marketing, like all of our drop-offs are pretty much marketing, and it's usually by request. It's not really that I'm promoting that. I do have it in my deck. I have it in my proposals as well, but we don't do a lot of them like within my company, but we do a lot of them for white labels. So we do support other companies that sell them. So there definitely is a market for it, especially in LA. I mean, there's so many marketing events out here that there definitely is a market for it. I just haven't tapped into that just because I haven't spent the time to do it. So there's money in it for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely money in it. I feel like, I mean, it is for us a lower priced item, and that's where it gets popular, where it just doesn't make sense for somebody to pay staff to be there for 12 hours a day, because we charge a lot for our staff to be on site. So if you got like a 3 or 4 day conference that's running 8 to 10 hours, 12 hours a day, they don't want to pay for your staff to be there. So it's just significantly cheaper to have a kiosk dropped off. Comparative to having a staff. So, and a lot of times they'll have their own BAs and stuff like that. So having just one other person just doesn't make sense. A lot of time it's very simple setup. So it's just not needed. But we like to host our photo booths, but not always.
For certain circumstances, like a convention like that, it's not worthwhile. They don't have the traffic, or they just can't justify the cost of. I mean, I wouldn't even be able to justify the cost for them, just because those drop-offs are great for those, and they still get the same content. They get the social media, reach impressions, which is awesome. And honestly, I always think of when I think of drop-offs, I always think of like when we're at PBX, like the photo quality doesn't matter sometimes. Just having that photo or that video with you and like everybody that you're attending with, that's just fun anyway. So like when I do sell drop-offs, I don't sell it. I do not talk about photo quality. It's never a conversation. Right. I don't talk about the camera. I don't talk about what it's equipped with. I talk about just the fact that it is going to get them fun captures, is going to get them content, is going to get them a boost on social media, their branding. I talk about the brand placement everywhere on the microsite, on the kiosk itself. So it's not the focus of what a drop-off iPad selfie booth is. So you don't talk about it because that's not the focus.
If we weren't doing a drop off, I mean, we don't talk about photo quality with corporate clients at all anyways, because they don't care. They want people to come and push their brand and have that experience and whatnot. So even if it is a DSLR with really great photo quality, it's not something that we're mentioning unless for some reason we feel like
unless you're selling glam. If you're selling glam or like the portrait studio,
But so we mentioned like iPad based or DSLR. We don't ever drop off DSLR. I see in the groups that some people do. We don't. Like, we want it to be absolutely as simple as possible because we want the drop off to be a drop off. We don't want, like, we do have some tech support available, but we don't want to be available. Like, we don't want to be
Right.
answering calls. We don't want, like, a lot of times they're showing up to the trade show floor at like 7 a.m. and we don't want those text messages in the morning telling us that the camera didn't connect or whatever. And for that same reason, we do not do prints either. If you want prints, you need staff. That's
You
just
should not
our
yeah.
rule. So.
Yeah, you definitely, especially with the iPad, you definitely should not be doing prints with an iPad just because it's most of the time it's like based on Wi-Fi or you have like a third piece of equipment. There's just so much.
Again, connectivities, anything that can go wrong. And I do see people in our groups that are very advocate that they've been doing printers with drop-offs for years and have never had an issue, but maybe those are social events. There's no way I would just leave a printer for 3 days and just trust that it's going to be fine. So we try to keep it as streamlined and simple as possible. If they're asking us, can we have 2 or 3 photo strips options? You can, but let's not do that because it's going to be self-service.
You can, but it has to have an attendant. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want options. You want people to touch the screen and a countdown to start. Just very, very simple and very intuitive. You don't exactly. And that's the direction that we always go. And it's great because like the iPad booths do so many things, I guess. Yeah. I was going to say the DSLRs, but I keep separating DSLR from iPads, but they are iPad booths now too. But anyways, the iPad booths, you can do the AI, you can do video, you can do GIFs and boomerangs. Like you can do whatever the client really wants. With like we do confessionals a lot. I guess not a lot, but often. It's a small percentage of our drop-offs. That's a little more complex
for a drop-off, though.
But it's not, though. So we just have a mic standing in front of it. And again, they just touch the screen. There's typically like a prompt, like a question or something. And there's a countdown for 5 seconds. And then they just talk for a few seconds and it stops and they're done. They could walk away. So they don't need to text to themselves. It's just locked up, done, next person. So it's very easy.
I haven't done that. I haven't done confessionals as a drop off, but
we like to call them testimonials. I don't know how they became confessionals in the industry, but what are we confessing?
That's a good point, Jason. That's a good point.
Everywhere they're called confessionals, but testify.
But I think one of the biggest things about like if you're selling drop offs, like you have to really be communicating with your client, like what exactly a drop off entails. Like you talked about tech support. Like we're available remote, but we want to avoid that. But having that discussion with your client, like who they need to reach out to, you should be providing a number for them if anything goes wrong. Because even though iPads are really amazing, very, very simple to set up and drop off, there's things that come up. Like just from my own experience, like somebody unplugging you from the wall, somebody tripping over, you gaff it and somehow they still they still manage to trip over and trip out the AC power plug, like things like that you have to plan for. And that's the reason why, like for me, my company, when we do drop offs, we charge a minimum regardless of, like, if you're doing it for super cheap because you're just thinking as a cheaper option, like you're really selling yourself short, because the value to our clients for iPad booths is not an iPad booth to them. It's an iPad booth to us. To them, it's a marketing tool. So you have to understand, like, there is a lot of value to them for the data they're collecting, the emails and the brand opportunity that they have. So you don't have to sell it for substantially cheaper. Like there's a lot of companies, and my company is one of them. Like we sell it for, it's marginally different in price from like our regular DSLR booth, but what they get with it is just a lot more on the marketing side, like their focus. So you don't have to sell it. I mean, you don't have to sell it for $200, $500. You can literally sell it for.
Please don't.
Yeah,
I said cheaper, but not cheap. We definitely don't. It's just a cheaper option than having labor.
Yeah, but I think it's important to talk about that, because there's a lot of companies that just think like, okay, well, this is really easy to do, so I'm just going to charge a couple $100, and you're selling yourself short, because yes, it is easy to set up and it is easy to drop off, but there's still a lot of back end that you have to do. I mean, there's still the design work, the communication, there's still testing, there's a slew of things that you still have to do to deliver this service. So if you're selling it for $200, $500, like you really are just cheating yourself. And opportunity cost, we talk about that a lot. Like that booth can easily, and not just the booth itself, but that iPad alone, because iPads now, we use iPads we have the same iPads that we rotate into a lot of different other services. So that iPad alone has an opportunity cost that we don't want to be stuck if we're going to rent
Right.
like a selfie booth. We're not going to rent it for less because that same iPad might have a demand at a 360 for $4,000, So you have to think about that too. Like, don't
Losing
price
your
it cheap.
inventory.
Yeah, don't price it cheap just because you think it's easy. There's still a lot of work on your end that you have to do, even
So
without the operational
about
cost
that
of like
work, that
staff.
tech support and stuff. So obviously, I've mentioned several times, we want to make this as streamlined, as simple as possible. One of those things, if you don't know what guided access is, like you should know what guided access is if you're using iPad booths.
Yes.
Definitely want to set it up in guided access when you leave so that people cannot leave the photo booth software.
Exit the app. Yes. And there's different iPad builds. So depending on what iPad build that you have, because we have several versions of iPads, depending on which iPad build you have, the way you access guided access is different. So we can't even give you direction on it, but you can YouTube it. I mean, if you ever need help with that, YouTube has all the answers for you for guided access.
Or ChatGPT also has all the
I haven't
answers.
tried that. That's good to know.
Yeah. Also, so there you can set up some automations, and I'll give a shout out to Jason Cage here because he is the one that. It's funny because I've been using photo booths and iPad photo booths for years, and I use automations on my own personal devices every day. Like when I get to the gym, my watch automatically goes to like calorie counters and foot counters and things like that, and my phone goes into do not disturb. Like I use automations everywhere, but I never did for the photo booth for some reason. I don't know where that disconnect was, but Jason shared with me some of his automations, and I'll share them here. They're really great. So you can set up automations to do things. For example, if that iPad loses power, when it powers back on, it's not going to be on guided access anymore. That's the only way to get out of guided access if you don't have a code, is to let the power die all the way down and come back on. And regardless, if you tell people not to turn the iPad off at nighttime at a conference, a lot of times they just unplug them still. They unplug everything, that ring light's on, there's light, and they want everything turned down, and then they'll plug it back in the morning. It'll come back on. It'll just be an iPad, and they'll be like, what's the code to start this thing? So you can set up an automation because iPads automatically connect to Wi-Fi. You can tell your iPad, as soon as this iPad connects to Wi-Fi, automatically start up SnapPick, and as soon as SnapPick starts, automatically go into guided access. And
what?
Yes, so you don't ever have to worry about that anymore. If they
what
plug it in
what
the
are
next
you
day,
using?
Just the Shortcuts app on the iPad. It's
what?
A stock, something that's on every iPad already, and you could
What?
also. And there's a lot of different things that you can use the automations for as well. So, for example, if you don't want to put it on guided access because you want your client to have access in case they need to put in Wi-Fi password later or something like that, you can set it up an automation that just says whenever SnapPick closes, open SnapPick back up. That way, if it crashes, it'll just automatically open again. So
this is all built in iPad already?
Yeah, it's an application called Shortcuts. When you go to Shortcuts, there's a thing that says like automations. Just click on that automation. A lot of people do this for their personal stuff, so that like you can set up like location automation. So like when you get home at night, your lights automatically turn on or something like that. So it's the same thing.
I use all that stuff.
Yes, but we don't use them. That's what I was saying. I use all that stuff myself, but I never put it on my business iPads, and I don't know why, but you should.
And that is something so new to me. That's good to know. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah. Not me, Jason.
And Jason Cage.
Yeah.
Jason Cage. Thanks, Jason Cage.
Yeah, so automations are fantastic. Definitely that has been a part of all of our drop-offs now. We always set up automations to make sure things happen automatically when the Wi-Fi connects or when the power's on or whatever. You can have automations move files around. You can there's a lot of different things that the automations can do. You can have it turn on focuses or turn off focuses. So there's a lot that you can play around with there. What else with tech support? So we'll have them just call us directly if they have any issues, but that's pretty rare. Don't do any printing. Let's look at my list here. You mentioned branding already. Like, of course, if we're doing this, we want to upsell branding as much as we can and kind of vinyl wrap everything and the microsites and all that jazz. Guest experience, I kind of covered that. We want to make it as absolutely user-friendly as possible. Just a touch here, and literally when they touch, the countdown starts. We don't want to have any options. A lot of times the client will
Any sort of
demand options,
confusion.
especially if it's like AI background removal. They'll want different backgrounds to choose from and whatnot. We discourage that as much as we can. We just want touch, countdown, enter your phone number, or else if you want to collect a name or any other content. Let's see. Kind of went over pricing and value. Internet. We use the iPad's data, and we let them know, our clients know, that we're on the T-Mobile LTE network, and that they will be deceived while we're setting it up, and you're going to have really fast response times. But as soon as that trade show opens and it starts filling up with bodies, it will be non-existent. So we very much encourage them to get their own wired or wireless Wi-Fi. Yes, drop that line. Just make sure that's very, very transparent, so they're not emailing you telling you that no photos are coming through. Because a lot of people are like, nah, that's good. Your LTE is fine, and it's really not. I mean, everything will go out in time, but it won't be instant. But unfortunately, a lot of times, like, people will tell us, well, it's either that or they want $27,000 to drop an internet line. You know, some of these conference calls are just absolutely ridiculous. So you do what you got to do.
Yeah, but that line of communication with your customers, you should be covering these things anyways, because it will cover yourself. Like, the last thing you want is a customer thinking that is the service that you dropped is horrible because the emails don't get sent out. If you're setting that tone, set the expectations so that if it does have to queue within 24 hours, they're not looking at like a fail. They already know that was a possibility, so it's still a success in their mind.
Access to the iPad, of course, you want something that is secure so someone can't steal. We've never had any problem with theft. Most of those, the trade show floors are locked up, and a lot of times they have security. Like, we don't even ask. We're not concerned about it. But we do want to make sure the iPads are secure. Not only secure, but accessible in case we need to go there and get off guided access. To do that, you need to have access to your top power button to press that 3 times to get out of guided access. And a lot of photo booths don't provide access to that button. So if you're going to be doing drop-offs and using guided access, make sure you use one that has access to that button. We use the Pearl by Pickbox, which has a keyed door entry into the back. So we just pop that key open, and then we can stick our finger down there and hit that button a few times and get out of there. What else? As far as private events, again, I mentioned that we don't really, if someone asked, like when we get really booked, like right now for holiday parties, pretty much if they call us right now, we're going to tell them all we have available is a drop off. It's a digital. There's no prints. There's no backdrop. But if you want something, we could do that because all our equipment is out. So we do offer it, but we don't even like try to sell it. We're like, look, this is what it is, because we just, again, we want to set those expectations. We don't want them to feel like, wow, this is what their company is. Like, we can bring this out, but this is all it is. And we do sell a few, but
I'm gonna be honest, I don't like to, even when the client is asking for these iPad drop-offs for their social, I don't even like to sell it, just because my experience has been very negative. Like, it's far from positive. And like, we have a reputation that we have of like delivering amazing services, and even when I set that communication and set that tone with my clients on the social side, I feel like they still always have buyer's remorse, because almost every event that we've done, they've always called me back, and it's never anything, it's not really anything valid. It's just they're finding ways to like recoup. And it's probably because, the way I brand it, you guys, this is, you may brand your company with all iPad booths. That's totally different conversation. But this is just my own experience. Like, the way we brand my company, we showcase like beautiful photos and sharp, clear, nothing dark, nothing dingy. So in their mind, even when I'm communicating to them that this is going to be nothing like that,
they've already built a
they
vision
still
in
they
in their
yes
head.
they already yes. So branding, this is the power of brand. This is the power of branding, and I'm very blessed that people have this mentality of like what my brand is and what we deliver. But there's times where it does become like it becomes like a crutch for me, and this is one of those cases where like it doesn't matter how clearly I communicate that to my client. The ones who book selfie booths for social events, I have just always gotten a call the next day, and it's always been something for them, like something that they're not happy with, and it's usually because it has nothing to do with the service or anything. It's just they're not happy because in their mind they had imagined something totally different, even though I communicated
and a
very
lot of
clearly.
times it's not that they're unhappy necessarily, it's just that they're not happy. When we're used to talking to customers the next day, they're typically like overwhelmed
Thrilled.
and when they're just like,
Yes.
yeah, you could come pick it up, it was fine.
Yeah.
It's kind
Yeah.
of a takes your
Yeah.
steam away. So I definitely agree.
Yeah.
But some companies, that's what they do. They've branded differently, and
That's
that's
how they
great. If you're
yeah.
a company, I know Christy and where's she, Missouri
Chrissy
City?
Sidwell?
Yeah, so
Sidwell?
she does
Yeah.
a lot of drop-offs, and that's what her company does. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll have to have her come on and talk about drop-offs, because I know she does them a lot for private
Yeah.
events and stuff. So she could certainly shed some light where we can't, because again,
Yeah.
I know a lot
'Cause
of
we
people
don't
do
market that
prints.
way.
We don't. So
Yeah.
just not something
So
that we do.
I just want to say it's not that we're saying you're right or wrong for selling it to social events. I'm just saying for the way we
Yeah,
the way
just
we
doesn't fit our
brand
brand.
ourselves is it doesn't fit our brand, and that happens, Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not really a drop off, but an add on, something that we've just recently started doing. So Dustin over at Pickbox created, because the telephone audio guest books were so popular, he created a handset to go onto the front of his Pickbox Pearl that will hold a handset, telephone handset. And I know some other companies did this. I think Steve may have done something like that as well,
It's
but
awesome.
I'm just familiar with
awesome.
Pearls because that's what I have. But we do sell like a video guest book that we don't drop it off, but we do it as an add-on. So if we have a kiosk in the event, we'll go set that up somewhere else, and it's standalone. It's without a host, because we feel like if people are talking and leaving a video message, they don't want someone standing there looking at them. So not necessarily drop off, but kind of a drop off. We're just on
I know what you're
site
talking about. We do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. We do that for yeah, I love it's such an easy. It's funny because when you sell them as a standalone for social events, it's not ideal. But what I've seen is when we sell it as an add-on DSLR, we have like our regular DSLR booth, and then we add on either a roamer or a selfie. Then that is for whatever reason, that's a great addition to your event for social events. Like for weddings, we like to do that. Like they have the regular DSLR booth that, produces the amazing photos they have in their mind. But like the selfie booth is just like a bonus of capturing people. Either, you can face it towards the
dance floor,
not the sales floor, the dance floor. Yeah.
That's
and
fun.
You can move it. I don't promote moving it. I don't talk to my clients about moving it, but there's more flexibility with it. So that is a great way to sell like a drop off, because you're not exactly what you're saying. It's not really a drop off, but it is, because you're technically there, but you're not attending it. So we sell it as an add-on very often for social events, especially during Christmas, because these holiday parties, sometimes they have so many staff members that are attending that just one booth might not be enough, but two might be over the top. So like adding a roamer is like really amazing for them. They know like there's some people that are going to be a little bit shy, and I always push that. Like the nice thing about having a roamer added or a selfie booth, they don't have to have someone watching, not even just the video side. Like I know when I used to be shy, I wouldn't want to snap photos in front of someone who's watching me. So a selfie booth is like capturing those guests that are a little bit more timid about like an attended booth.
Yeah. In that same respect, like we tell guests, like if our hosts, if you can't get anyone over to the booth, go use the restroom. because there are a lot of people that are just too timid to just go
Yeah.
up to the booth. So like if you go use the restroom and come back, you'll usually have people at the booth, and then it'll kind of be oiled and we'll go for the rest of the night. But if you can't break that ice in the very beginning, if you just can't get people to come over and start using it,
then they just get intimidated. Yeah.
Abandon ship and leave for a few minutes, and you'll come back to people using it almost every time.
Yeah. So that's a great add-on for anybody. And so one of the tactics that I did early on when I started adopting like selfie booths and roamers, because I was not on board with them. I just had them because I had some white label contracts that they needed them. But I started during the holidays, like, hey, we're going to book you for this, but we want to test this out at your event. And, threw in a roamer or threw in a selfie booth. After that, they fall in love with it. They book it every year on top of their, so it's been great for me. Just, it doesn't cost me anything because I used to send 2 people. So, having a roamer run it for you don't even have to offer it for the whole 4 hours. We book only up to 4-hour events. So we wouldn't even say for 4 hours they'd have the roamer. We'd just be like, oh, we're going to throw this in for free, let you guys test it out for 2 hours. And the clients love it so much the next year that they specifically ask to add that service on. So that's a great way to sell it as well.
I've seen that a lot too with the roamer. If you could get the roamer in once, they love it.
They love it.
And we try to sell it for cocktail hour, because a lot of times the photo booth is set up in a reception room and that cocktail hour is somewhere else. So we always try to push, this is the time that people are getting comfortable with each other. They're catching up. They haven't spoken to each other for a long time. So having a roaming photo booth is really good, because we can approach people. We don't need to count on them coming to us. We're getting people smiling and holding each other and posing and kind of helping break that tense atmosphere up, and does pretty good for us, especially if you could get planners on board with that, because then they'll sell it every time.
Yeah. And nobody is talking about rest assured, you guys, because this is something that I was concerned about. Like, is anybody going to freak out how pixelate? Nobody cares. No. Nobody cares. Like,
especially with the roamer.
When I speak about roamers and selfies, the roamer specifically, like, I'm always like, we're in the action. Like, we're on the dance floor. We're like over there in the hallway where, groups of people are congregating and having conversation. Like, we're moving around, so we're not relying on anybody to come to us, and people love it. And if you have those roamers where the lights change, that is even more attention drawing. Like, as you're roaming around in the dark, I mean, like, people's eyes just automatically go that direction. It just adds like this nice glow to the ambiance as well. I know it's a weird thing to talk about, but that adds a little bit.
It piques curiosity. Everyone is always coming up and asking, what are you doing over here? What is that like?
So it's a cool experience.
Yeah, I always comment that it's like a comet almost, because once we go in, there's that light, and there's just like a trail of people that follow us around.
Follow behind you, yeah.
Moving through the event.
What's crazy is I did not answer, because when you're a photo booth owner and you see this technology, you know what you can produce, and you see this iPad roamer and you're like, what is this? This is all you see is like the flaws of pixelated photos and blurs. But when you're on site and you see people's reactions, and this is the experience that I had to really see for myself before I really embraced roamers. When I started seeing the reactions of people on a live event, I mean, it really transformed how I was selling it, because when you see it in real life, you step away from you being a photo booth owner, and that's important when you're selling these. Yeah.
Kind of got away from drop-offs. Unfortunately, neither one of us have a whole lot of insight on drop-offs. Hopefully, there's some value there, and if there's interest, we'll have someone like Christy come on and talk more about how they do drop-offs for social events.
Join our Facebook group and leave what you want. If you have additional questions, leave it on the Facebook group so we know where to collect the questions.
Yeah, post those in there, and we'll both be at PBX as well. So if you're listening to this before PBX, make sure you say hi to us.
Yeah.
And thanks. Talk to you next time.
Guys.
Thanks.
To keep the conversation going, join our Facebook group, Pro Booth Talk Community. If you enjoyed this podcast, consider showing your support by subscribing, liking, reviewing, or sharing this topic with someone in the industry.